And we're live. I'll just wait for a couple of minutes. Hi, I'm Pete Thomas. If you can hear me, can you just give me a thumbs up in the comments? Hopefully you should be able to see the comments. Give me a thumbs up, and then I know that you can hear me okay. Just give a couple of seconds, make sure everyone gets into the room. If you're watching this on a repeat on YouTube, thank you very much for following us. And yeah, so cool, Danny, got it. Thanks, mate. I appreciate it. Okay, so 30 minutes as per usual. It's just a 30-minute conversation, learning from all of the mistakes that I've made when I set up as a health and safety consultant. Today, I'm going to talk about day rate. Probably one of the most important things is how you get paid, how you price yourself as a safety consultant. But just first thing, last week's presentation, if you missed it, was by Anthony Taylor, which was on marketing and branding. He gave an overview of all of the sort of marketing and branding considerations that you should have as a health and safety consultant, or fire safety consultant, or well-being consultant, or whatever you're doing that's within that sort of sphere. It was very high level in terms of an overview. There's a lot to cover there, but Ant is going to be back either next week or the week after when I'm back off holiday, and he's going to delve into some more detail about the those areas that he covered in terms of marketing and branding. I'm still here on holiday. I'm not expecting anyone to feel sorry for me. The weather's great here. I've got sunburn. I don't know what the temperature is because they measure everything in Fahrenheit over in America, and I'm not sure, but I think it's between 90 and 100 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's really hot. So if I start sweating, it's not because I'm nervous, it's just because it's a million degrees here, and I had to turn the air conditioning down because otherwise it was mucking up with the microphone and the sound. So yeah, thanks very much for joining us. When I get back off holiday, I'm going to be a bit more organized with these. So I'm going to put out the invite almost immediately after for the next one, or I'll drop the link in. But it's hard to do it when you're away to get all this stuff organized. But I realized that I started this a few weeks ago, and I just want to remain consistent. I don't want to start this process and then drop off and leave you guys hanging for a couple of weeks when I went on holiday to then come back and talk about something. Yeah, I hope you like the marketing and branding one. I to be honest, I really thought that was informative, and I actually thought that was informative about the business that I've started now. And actually, I'm going to take some of what Ant said and actually put that into practice. I hope that worked for you. And as I say, if you missed it, it's available on YouTube, so you can go onto our YouTube channel. It should be available on there to view. So just let me know what you think. So very, very quickly, before I dive into the the sort of considerations that I would have over day rate, I just want to say that I set up a company called mysafetyconsultant.io. If you have a look at the website, it's a platform where health and safety consultants can advertise their services and where clients can directly find you. So at the moment, we've got a 3-month free trial. It's completely free. And I just want you to sign up to it, have a look. There may be some snags in it still. We're still working through. It's very new, but I appreciate the feedback, and this is why we're doing it completely free. So if you go onto the mysafetyconsultant.io, list your services at the top. So the main page you'll see is all aimed at your clients and trying to advertise your business. So don't log in or anything like that. That's all for your clients. But it's the list your services section. And then if you go through that process, it has like this really cool platform where you can talk about like what you've done. You can advertise your services. You can put your social media on there. You can put your website on there. So even the backlinks to your website you probably created is worth doing it, particularly as it's free at the moment. 3-month free trial. Just give it a go and let me know what you think. We're still on a soft launch. I've not gone mad with this yet. I've not plastered it all over LinkedIn. Just because it's still so new, I just want to keep testing it as much as I can to get it right. Because when I started as a consultant, there's an awful lot of stuff that nobody tells you how to do. So you go, well, look, I'm a safety professional. I've done all my qualifications. I've got my CMIOSH. What do I do now? And I joined a couple of, I'll be careful what I say, registrations, professional registrations, but the work doesn't come flooding in. Like, people have to be able to find you. You have to have this USP. You have to be able to sell yourself. And so there's all of these elements of things that no one actually tells you about. And so I've started this process completely free. I'm never going to charge for this. I'm just going to put it out there. And if you get value from it, then please let me know, because I'll just keep doing it if people are finding it valuable. If they're not, I'll stop. But if they're finding it valuable, then I'll keep doing it. So, right, I'll get on to the day rate issues now and considerations. But if you've got any questions, just please post them in the comments and I'll answer your questions. Okay, so the first thing that I did when I set up as a safety consultant is I went, right, okay, my job has changed, and that was how it happened. Okay, there was a restructuring work. I worked for the NHS at the time. They were going through a restructure, and they said, Pete, you're going to have to basically reapply for your job again. And I was like, you know what? I've had enough of this now. This is not what I wanted to achieve as a safety professional. I want to go my own way. I want to be able to build my own business. I want to be able to have the freedom and flexibility to do what I want to do. So I'm okay. I worked for the NHS at the time. I think I was paid like £40,000 a year or something. I can't remember. So say my take home was like £3,000, £3,000 a month. I just went, well, look, there's 20 working days in a month, so five working days in a week. Multiply that by 4 weeks in a month. I'll take my £3,000 and I'm going to divide it by 20, 150 quid a day rate. Fine, there we go. I can earn that money. Like, what a stupid idea when I look back now, like how naive. But I still hear people doing this now as safety consultants. So I go, well, look, if I take my wage and then I divide that by the number of working days per month, that's what I need to do, right? And if I add on a little bit more, but there's so many more things that you have to consider as a safety consultant. Like, one is you're not going to fill your time. Like, there were many weeks where I did like 2 days work, a week, a day's worth of work. And then there's all of this other stuff that you have to do to run your business. So like all the paperwork, like all the invoicing, like the branding and marketing, like the person that wants you to drive an hour to go and see them, or if you get a big client, you've got to get the train into London all day. All those expenses, they all come out of your pocket, and no one really tells you all that stuff. So 150, £200 a day is gone, but I still hear safety professionals doing this. I hear of them doing fire risk assessments for 150 quid. And I just sit and think, how do you make that work? That's never going to work long term. So the first thing I'd say is you need to research the market rates. So look at what safety professionals are actually charging in the market. Now that can be quite hard to do, but you can phone people up and you can say, look, I've got a fire risk assessment. How much would you charge me for this typically? And I'll be careful what I say. I'm not saying lie. I'm not saying pretend you're someone else, but you can ask the question. And I'll tell you what they charge if you want to know, because I've seen someone trying to provide training. So let me give you some examples. I saw a company trying to provide fire door training. Now, this wasn't like some BM Trada or FDIS fire door inspector course. This was someone coming in to a company to provide half a day's input on the things that you need to know about fire doors. So there's no formal qualification for this. It's just someone providing a bit of training. £3,000 for someone to come in and do half a day's training to like 8 people or something. I've seen someone doing a completely non-accredited training for Legionella, and this was for Legionella training. I want to say it was a day's course, £6,000, and that was their own certification. So this is it's not like they've got any sort of well, they will have overheads to pay for this, but it's not they've got certification costs. If you know what I mean, they're not like accredited courses. And I've seen people now charging around about £3,000 for a fire risk assessment. Now, those are sort of market rates that I've seen, but you've got to factor this in, because if I'd have seen those rates, by the way, a long time ago, then I'd have been like, I'm not working for the NHS anymore. I'll go straight into this. But it's not as simple as that. It's really not, because one, you've got to be in the position to get that work in the first place. You can't just advertise at that cost. They've also got massive reputation. They've also got huge online presence. That's why they've been found. That's where they can charge their money. But I did do this thing when I first started. I was like, well, what I'll do is I'll charge my time out £250 a day, right? When I fill up that time, when I'm fully booked out at £250 a day, okay, I will then start charging more money. I'll start charging like £350, £450, £500 until I get to the day rate that I'm happier with. It doesn't work like that, because what you'll find is then some of your clients that you take on at the beginning, they just always expect that rate. You can't go and do a fire risk assessment for someone 1 year for 150 quid and then go back and do a review the year after and start charging them £500 because they'll be like, well, hang on, you charged me 150 quid last year. Why are you now charging me £500? What's increased? You go, well, our insurance went through the roof and, we're really busy now. So now we're going to charge more money. There's the expectation that you're going to maintain it. So I guess one big thing that I would say is don't undersell yourself. And again, please post in the comments. Let me know. Let me know where you think you stand on that. If you think I'm right, if you think I'm wrong, I'm more than happy to have a conversation. But yeah, I would consider market rates, and I would strongly consider how you're gonna price your reviews at down the line, because you are almost expected to sort of maintain this standard price plus inflation. Specialization. You've got to consider specialization. Specialize in a particular industry of health and safety, or in a certain a certain specialism of health and safety, or a certain industry. There are certain industries out there that are very cash rich. There are certain industries that don't have a lot of money. So you're not going to be able to charge that much to some industries. They just don't have the money to pay it. And so if you're working in that industry, you're going to have to cut your cloth accordingly. And same as specialisms. Fire risk assessment at the moment seems to be in short supply in the UK. I think a lot of people have got out for a number of reasons. The insurance has gone through the roof. The days of like the stack 'em high, sell 'em cheap, £50 a fire risk assessment, thankfully, seem to have gone out the window. So those industries tend to charge an awful lot more money. Well-being, I'm not entirely sure what they're charging at the moment. Health and safety consultancy training, again, these are all things to consider in terms of what you're going to charge your day rate at. Training is quite a simple one actually to benchmark though, because you can just look at your local colleges, and actually that's an interesting thing. When I used to work as a consultant, I used to do some training for one of the local colleges. I was VAT registered, colleges aren't. So when you get your training through a college, they don't charge the VAT, so they end up being a lot cheaper than what you can charge. So I think that's another consideration as to who's your end user and are you VAT registered? Because if you're business to business, it's likely that you're going to be VAT registered and they're going to be VAT registered. But if you're business to customer as a trainer, then the chances are they're not going to be VAT registered. And that can actually affect you when you're trying to compete against a local college. Location. Location is a real key consideration. In London, for example, you've got a lot more consultancies there, but they charge an awful lot more money. ULEZ charges, parking charges, just generally getting around the city. And then I won't say cost of living as such, but I think there is an expectation that you're going to pay more if you're in the city. So that would suggest that if you're in if you're in rural Cornwall, for example, you wouldn't charge as much. But honestly, try and get a safety professional down in Cornwall. I do know a few, but they're few and far between. So when I live in Somerset now, but I would forever drive down to Cornwall to do work because people couldn't get a safety consultant. But they almost expect to charge you less because it's rural and so far away from London. But the reality is they're going to struggle to get someone. So it's swings and roundabouts, I would say. Okay, operating costs. Insurance is a big one. Insurance is a massive one. And it's not just insurances. I would put an operating cost down of what happens if it goes wrong. So I told a story on, I think, the first webinar that I did, where I traveled from Somerset up to Norfolk way to do a fire risk assessment. 2 weeks later, there was a fire, or I think it was like a week later, there was a fire. And I got a call from the owner saying, look, we've had a fire. The fire authority are coming out to site. They want to see you on site. Right, great. So now I've got to drive 7 hours. I not only do I lose the day's work that I had planned, but now I've got to drive 7 hours to site and back because the fire authority are out on site, and there was nothing wrong. I'd done nothing wrong. The fire, thankfully, wasn't serious. No one was hurt or anything like that. I'm not trying to sort of be rude or anything, but it's these costs that you don't really consider. And I can't say to the owner, well, Yeah, all right, I'll come out, but I'm going to charge you a day rate to come out because they're like, fire authority have requested you there, so you should go. So these are things that you wouldn't factor in. Sorry, I'm wiping my eyes, but I've got sun cream in my eyes. But you've also got things like insurances, registrations, certifications, your CPD. So if you do a number of different roles in health and safety, just keeping up with the CPD alone is costly, and these are all things that you have to factor in. Not just the cost to actually do the courses and keep up to date with your registrations, but also the cost of the time out that you've got to take. So already when we said, oh, there's 20 working days, well, how much CPD do you do a year? Maybe 10 days CPD? These are all factors to consider. And in those sort of operating costs as well, I would consider yourself almost as an employee, not just self-employed. And I would factor in things like leave, things like sickness, all of these other elements that people don't always consider, because you can burn out pretty quickly if you're getting up at 5 in the morning to drive somewhere. These are things that you really want to consider. The other thing is demand for services. Demand for services is massive. For some specialisms, there is massive demand at the moment, particularly fire, particularly things like FRAEWs, particularly fire strategies. All of these things, they're in high demand. So ultimately, you can charge more for it because you're in demand. It's a consideration that you've got to factor in. Client type. Okay, so this was one that I thought about from personal experience. Okay, so client type. When you have that contract for a large company and you sign that first contract for a large company, mine was, who was it? I think PVH Group, which is Tommy Hilfiger and Calvin Klein. That was one of my first large contracts. And the beauty of that is that you could subcontract a lot of that work out. So I had a lot of consultants working for me. That work was subcontracted out. That was great. That worked really well. But my consultants expected me to pay them within 30 days. PVH and large companies pay you on 90-day terms. And it's normally 90 days from the date that the work is signed off. So if it takes you, for example, it could take 2 months to do the project. Then it takes a month for the work to be signed off. And at that point, you've got 30 days until you get paid. You could be looking at between 3 to 6 months before your pay comes through. But you've had to pay out consultants within 30 days. Cash flow is king. Like if you run out of cash as a small business, you're scuppered. So it's really important then to make sure that the large companies that you work for, that you don't bite something off that's too big that you can chew, if that makes sense. Bite off too big that you can chew? Yeah, I think it makes sense. Because otherwise, what you're gonna end up doing is that you end up taking on too much concentration risk as well. Like if your big contract is just one big company, if something happens, if they don't pay you, if something goes wrong, you're stuck. That's a real painful position to be in. So what a lot of companies that I know, a lot of consultancies that I know, they won't take on more than a certain percentage of their work with one company, because if something goes wrong, you're scuppered. On that topic, another thing to consider is credit checks. I would really recommend undertaking credit checks on anyone that you're going to do work with. It's really easy to do. In fact, you can normally do it for free at first. So if you're taking on a big contract with someone and you want to make sure, some of the biggest businesses I've seen have got issues in terms of credit, particularly at the moment. Honestly, if I can give you one tip, just do a credit check. Just do it. It's really easy to do online. I'm not sitting here trying to sell any credit reference agencies or anything like that. I'll sign up in the comments and then I get some money. No, it's nothing like that. Just do a credit check. And it's a strong recommendation. Okay, one of the other things that I did is, if there's smaller companies, to get over this cash flow issue, ask them to pay in advance or ask them to pay a deposit of 50%. I don't know why we wouldn't do that as safety consultants. Like most other industries do that. And I set up an account with, I want to say it was like Square or one of these companies where you can take payments online. And all I would do when I would quote for the work, when I would do the work, the quote stage or when they were talking is just say, yeah, to book that in, we'll take a deposit in advance, 50%, right? I found two things. No one ever refused that, by the way. I never had one person refuse to pay me that money, for starters. And two, I found that roughly half of the people I asked just said, I'll just pay all of it in advance now. And they still do. Like, just like, I'll just pay all of it in advance now. Why would I not do that? It's not a problem. You're going to do the work. You've come recommended. I'll just pay you that money in advance now. That's a really, I think it's a handy tip because honestly, like I said, cash flow is a huge issue when you first start up a business. And so having that money coming in, it's great. And it's security as well. And it makes you know like why you're doing that job and that work. What else am I looking at? Length of contracts. Yeah. So contracting is a different gig in terms of, if you're going to do day rate work. But one thing that I have noticed is that day rates at the moment seem to be really low. Like I remember day rates 10 years ago being 750, 800 pounds a day. And, we've had this huge inflation issue and day rates are just staggeringly low. I mean, I'm still seeing day rates of like 250 pounds a day, but that might work out for a couple of months, but then after that, you've got to find work again. You're going to have a period of downtime. I don't know who's taking that work at the moment. It's just my opinion, but the contracting side, I'm not sure. I'm not sure the money's there at the moment, to be honest with you. Okay, I'm going to go on to the final tip that I've got. If you've got any questions, post them in the comments now, because then I'll answer them. If you don't want to post them in the comments, which I understand, please reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn. You can get in touch with me there. But the final tip that I was given, which honestly, this was by someone that I respect an awful lot, was to remain reassuringly expensive. If you undervalue yourself and you make yourself look cheaper in order to guarantee the work, you effectively cheapen the service that you offer in the mind of the buyer. So with this job, it is serious and remain reassuringly expensive. And they also said something else. They said, never give discounts. If it's someone that you really want to work with, and it's a contract that you really want, and you can really see some future in it, then never give discounts. Keep your day rate the same. But what you can do is reduce the number of days that it can take to do the job. And I quite like that, because if you think about it, so say you're going to charge £1,000 a day, for 5 days, the job is £5,000. If you reduce the day rate down and keep the number of days the same, any future contract that you get, it's going to be discounted. They're going to go, well, you charged £800 last time. Why now are you charging us £1,000? If you can charge £800 a day, then why couldn't you just charge that now? So never reduce the day rate, but you can reduce the number of days it will take to do the project. So rather than saying, well, look, it'll take 5 days, you can say, well, look, we could take 4 days, but we could remove X, Y, and Z, even if it's only minor, to make up for it. Because what that does then is when you reduce the number of days, ultimately they're happy. But then if you were to retain them as a client and they use you again in the future, you've not undermined your day rate, and so you've kept it at a good, stable day rate. So that's it. That's all I've got. If you've got any questions, last chance, put them in the comments, or reach out to me on LinkedIn, or reach out to me on YouTube. This video will be available on YouTube. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the support by coming on here and listening in. Hopefully next week we're going to have Ant back on. He's going to talk again about marketing and branding. In a couple of weeks' time, I've got a sales trainer who's a really good sales trainer. He's a friend of mine, and he's going to come in and talk about the sales process and talk about building up like a lead funnel, and talk about how to actually close that sale, because that's a really important thing that, again, no one ever tells us as safety professionals. We sort of go into this and we go, all right, well, I'm chartered, I've got my insurance, I'm good to go. But no one tells you about the marketing. No one tells you about the branding. No one tells you about sales. No one tells you about funnels. All of these things that no one talks about, and that's what I'm hopefully here to try and help and shine a light on and just do my best to try and help. So that's all I've got. Thank you very much for your time this evening. Remember, mysafetyconsultant.io. Have a look. 3 months free. Sign up. That'd be amazing. It would make my day. That's it. Thanks very much. Cheers. Bye-bye.